This is the video number 10 for assignment A01 in Architecture 5354. And previously in our video tutorials, we had established some views so we can see, probably better to see here. We've created a topo where our site's going to go and where the civil engineering building and the Holden Hall is going to go, and then the portion of the key that we want in our area, and then the parking here. The next thing we're going to do is add here, we're going to add a curb, close that gap with a curb object, and that's what we're going to do in this video. That's all we're going to do, and then I'll do the buildings and other things, the sidewalks, in another video. One thing I did want to mention and talk about is the technique I'm going to show you are techniques that were developed. Let's go back here, see if I can find our playlist. There's our playlist. You'll see our playlist right here. I haven't added other videos to it, but you'll see right down in here I added in the playlist 2 videos by Balkan Architect, which go into how to create sidewalks and streets in topos. Specifically, what he does here is shows you how to do those topos on steep sites that have a lot of topography to them. Our site's flat, so I'm going to show you just, techniques of how to do sites that are just flat, or where we don't have to shape the actual street or the sidewalk or the curb to the site. But these are very good tutorials and techniques. This one is the most current one. It's the simplest and easiest way to put curbs and streets in. This one is a little bit more complicated, but it shows you a really good technique on how to place sidewalks that have to form to an existing topography. Okay, so with that said, now let's go back. I'm going to get rid of that, and let's go back in here and put our curb in. And let's go back. Well, we can do it from the 3D view right here. I think I'm going to turn off that realistic and just go back to a hidden line. Okay, because it's not that complicated yet that I really need shading. And so what I'm going to do is put my curb in here. To do the curb, Balkan recommends that you use this railing. Okay, this is a railing for stairs. Okay, and as I go through the process, I'll explain to you why the railing. There's a couple other ways you could do it, especially since the site is flat. Okay, you could use just a component right here. We could use a model in place component and do a loft of the curb profile along that, because it's flat. And so there's a variety of different ways that we could approach it. This is a pretty good way. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So we're going to use it. Now, enough jabber. So the first thing we're going to do, if we're going to use this railing, we need a profile that represents our curb and what our curb is going to look like. And to do that, what I'm going to do is anytime you do a loft type procedure, you need to have a profile, or it's helpful to have a profile already made of what you want to loft. You can do it on the fly, but it sure is much easier if you already have that profile defined. Now let's go in and create that profile. So what we're going to do is come into Files. We don't want to open an existing one. What we're going to do is create a new one. We're going to create a new family. And then we're going to get all of these templates for new family types, all the way from, details, doors, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to go down here to railings, profiles, and then here's a rail profile. Okay, this is the template for that. And if we open that up, we're going to see this is like a sectional cut through the railing, okay, and its shape, which the railing which we're going to use as a curb. I hope that doesn't confuse you. So this is the top of the rail. This is what is called the center line of the rail. I actually want my curve to go off to one side. So we're just going to draw that curve right there. And to do that, it's pretty simple. I'm going to create me a line and then a rectilinear line, and I want the top of the rail to be the top of the curve, okay? And so, and then I know that curves are in the States, or in Lubbock at least, are usually 6 inches by 6 inches, okay? And so I'm going to just put that there. And of course, they have a rounded edge in the States. So I'm going to use the fillet command right here. And let's just go ahead and select that. And then we'll just pull this back and we'll adjust it here in just a second. So there's 2 inches, and that's about right, actually. I kind of guessed pretty much correct there. Okay, so 2 inches. So that's the profile of my curve. If I wanted the other piece of the concrete coming out here for the gutter, I could draw that in, for a little bit more detail. If you wanted to, that would be fine. It would actually go down here because the street's going to be up here, so it would anyway. But I don't need that. This becomes what is called the insertion point. This center of these two reference lines is always the insertion point, where it's connected to the path for lofting purposes or whatever. And so now we have that. You can leave this rail top, you can delete those, but I'm just going to keep them. So the next thing I want to do is save this file. So I'm going to go File and do a save to it. And it's probably most likely going to kick me back to wherever my Revit file is, but it may not. So I want to stop that. Okay. I'm going to go in here and 5354 assignments. Go in here to my and you can see I've already created, kind of testing the process out different. Okay, so we don't see my Revit files. I only see my family files here. I'm going to call this, curve profile 3, and that's the one we'll use. Even though they're all identical, I could use any of them. So now we have the curve profile, and we're going to load that into it. So we can go File, Modify, Create, load into Project and Close. And so that's what I want to do. So I'm going to load that into the project. Now that is in there. And now I'm going to create this kind of railing condition. So I'm going to come in here and go Rails and sketch path. Okay. Because what we're going to do is we're going to use our detail lines to sketch that path for the loft. Okay. It's basically a lofting command with some, exceptional rules. You can see the base level is top of curb. Okay. Is the curb level. That's where it's going to be, in a sense, inserted. And then we see type here. Let's use a guardrail, a handrail pipe, I think, is probably going to be the best one for us to use and simplest. I'm going to edit the type because I can get rid of a lot of things, because all we need is the handrail at the top. And so to do that, I'm going to duplicate this. Don't ever change your existing things, okay? And then I'm just going to call this curb. Yeah, curb. Probably street. And say OK. And then I'm going to turn this off, okay? So we're going to use top rail off. And I'm not going to get into explaining, but here are all the different, I can have up to, I can add multiple types of, in Rails, are considered the horizontal element in a stair rail, right? So I'm just going to select that one and go delete, 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 delete. Okay, so that I only have one left. I don't want it to be offset, so I'm going to set this to 0. Okay, and then I'm not going to use the circular 1-inch circular handrail. What I'm going to do is go in here and you'll see there's my curve profile. And so I'm going to apply that. Material. You know, I want this to be some kind of concrete type of thing. I think Balkan, he does it as using gypsum white, but I'm going to use a concrete, kind of a gray appearance. I don't particularly care for this particular concrete material image, but we'll just use, matter of fact, well, we'll just use that. And then if we want to change it, you can always come back in and change it, right? Create. And so that's the material. We're going to apply all that. Okay. Apply it and say OK. And then balusters, we're going to open this up. And here we're not going to have any balusters. Balusters are the vertical elements of a stair rail. And so we're going to change all these to none. Okay, so we can just go in here and none these out. And so we will get, so all we're going to have is this handrail, basically a loft of the handrail. Okay. Now, why are we doing this with a handrail rather than just a massing component? Well, the reason is because it can host the handrail. I can tell it to host to a particular surface, and so if my topography was up and down, after I do this, I could say, well, host to this surface, and if the topography changes or if it goes up and down or whatever, then it's going to take that path or that shape, which is kind of useful, especially in topographies that aren't just flat like ours. Okay, so I'm going to say that. I'm going to say OK. And now the first thing I have to do is draw a path or select a path, okay, for this. And so what I'm going to do is go here, select pick, and I'm going to pick this line, okay. And it's saying it's slightly off axis. Okay, yeah, I know that. Once again, it's to the GIS system. So I'm going to select those two, and I'm going to say OK. And now what I should have is a curve right there. If I zoom in on it, I'm going to see a curved curve there. If I go into my presentation version of this, okay, I'm going to see a curve. Let's turn on realistic so we can see it a little bit. We can see that curve. I'll deselect it. So it's a concrete-y kind of color. Of course, it goes beyond. I don't want it to do that, okay? So let's change the path of the loft right here. And so we'll do that. We're going to do that in the site work. So we're going to select that rail. Let's see if we got the rail. No, you see right down here, it'll tell you what you're selecting. I'm just going to move the cursor over here, hit the tab key a couple of times until I find railing, and then I'm going to select it. And when I do, you can see these three to the modify panel are going to come up, and I'm going to hit edit path, and then I'm just going to click on the path, and I'm going to grab its endpoint and swing it around and place it right there. You'll notice this little path signal. This is telling me the direction of the loft, okay? And that can be critical in some conditions, not all conditions, but in some conditions. The next thing is I'm going to come here and do the same thing here. Okay, let's see if I can get it so it lines up with my, probably need to go in further. Okay. Now you're going to see that it's perpendicular. Okay, it lofted it perpendicular, and I'm probably going to have to fix that, and I'll show you how to fix that in just a minute. Okay, so now it's been trimmed. I want you to notice that when I'm selecting that rail, okay, these little lines right up here come up here. That flips the profile. Okay, let's go into a section. Okay, so I can better show you what that means. So right now the profile is in the right direction right here, right? It's going, here's the topo, and it's going in that. But if it came in because of the direction of the path, being lofted inside like this or flipped in the other direction, we would just go back to that line. Let's see if I can get that rail. Okay, and just click this, and if I click this, then it's going to flip along that axis the profile, and now the profile would be correct. Okay. The other thing is that we want to do, and this is what's unique about using a railing over, say, just a simple architectural component, mass component, is that I can attach this rail to an object as its host. I'm going to go back into this section because it's probably easier to do it in there. So I'm going to select that rail, and I'm going to say, use this surface right here and host the path along the edge of that surface. Okay, so if I say host it to that surface, I'm going to click on that surface. Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to click on the path, come up here, say pick new host, and then instead of hosting it to that detail line, I'm going to host it to that topo surface. Yeah, and now it'll follow that topo surface. If I were to change and raise the topo in any way or shape, now the curb would move with that, okay, which could be really convenient. So to kind of finish this particular street off, I'm going to go through that process one more time of creating the street there on this side of the street curb on this side. So let's go back into SiteWorks right here, and we're going to go into Architecture tab, Railings, we'll save it later. And then railings, we're going to use my curb railing. I'm going to use the base level. Okay, so right now it's locked to the base level rather than the curb, but eventually we'll host it to the topo. And so then I'm going to come in here, do my pick lines. Okay, select the lines, make sure that they're a continuous path. If they're broken, they won't work. Okay, so I'm just going to go in here, select, select, select. Once again, zoom in close enough that I know I'm getting lines that connect. See, there's that little piece right there. There's sometimes always these little pieces that you have to be careful about that you're getting. And of course, all I'm doing is using the wheel on my mouse to go in and out. That's the reason I really recommend that you get a wheel mouse or something that can simulate it. And of course that line isn't perpendicular, but I don't need it perpendicular. Matter of fact, it shouldn't be perpendicular. And then I'm going to pick that one. So now I have it all picked, and I'm going to say, okay, loft that rail along that line right there. And of course it's going to do that. Okay, and we'll see right here. There it is. Let's go into our section and look at it. And we can see, of course, there's a curve in there, so we're seeing the curve. But I'm going to select this again, okay? Do the same thing I did the other one, say pick host, and I'm going to select that topography as the host. And now the topography is the host. And of course, what we're picking up here is that curvature in the curb. And then you need to go over, of course, and do the same thing for the parking lot. Okay, so that ends curbs, and now we'll move on to adding buildings.